Good morning and thank you for joining us on Thriving on the Suncoast. Do you know that each May the Administration for Community Living leads our nation in a celebration of Older Americans Month? The ACL designated the 2017 Older American Month theme to be Aging Out Loud, to give aging a new voice, one that reflects what today's older adults have to say. This theme shines a light on many important trends. More than ever before, older Americans are working longer, trying new things, engaging in their communities. They're taking charge, they're striving for wellness, they're focusing on independence and advocating for themselves and others. What does it mean to age has really changed, and OAM 2017 is a perfect opportunity to recognize and celebrate what getting older looks like today. Thriving on the Suncoast and Comfort Keepers Home Care are proud to advocate and amplify the voice for the many people and older Americans that want to raise awareness of vital aging issues across the country. Join us as we speak up and out loud for OAM. Express yourself, take singing lessons, write that novel, tell stories to your grandkids, or visit a senior center. You're never too old to set new goals. And by the way, let Comfort Keepers help you stay young and active. Give us a call to learn how much fun we can add to your life. Now on to our topic for today. The word hernia is derived from the Greek word hernios, meaning bud, sprout, or protrusion. I had no idea that it was such a widespread phenomenon. When I started talking with people about hernias, almost everyone I spoke with had one repaired, and some even had two. Around 27% of men and 3% of women will suffer from an inguinal hernia, which is the most common type. Based on estimates released by International Hernia Society, some 20 million people worldwide underwent inguinal hernia way back in 2007. Repair of inguinal hernia is one of the most common operations in general surgery. Here with us today is Dr. Jonathan Eunice. Dr. Eunice grew up in New York City, the son of a prominent physician. He attended medical school at State University of New York, and he did his residency and vascular fellowship at University of New York at Stony Brook. When he moved to Sarasota, he decided he was going to specialize just in the vascular surgery area, and over time he devoted his entire practice exclusively to hernia and abdominal wall repair. When I asked around in the community about hernia repair, Dr. Eunice's name was always at the top of the list. The Center for Hernia Repair says it all. And he probably does more hernia repairs than anyone that you know in town. Doc, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Certainly a unique specialty. Tell us a little bit about what is a hernia?
A hernia is a hole in the abdominal muscular wall. You know, your abdomen is bounded in the front by two rectus muscles and these oblique muscles on the side. And a hernia is a hole that occurs through the muscle. And it can occur in primary locations that just happen, and it can occur from previous surgeries.
So how did, you said previous surgeries, I understand there's some congenital things that happen, and then there's potentially, things that cause it, I guess. Is that right? You want to maybe address those different scenarios?
Well, the the primary hernia is the ones that occur without previous surgery, usually have a genetic origin, like you've received it from your mother or father. And even though we think that heavy lifting is the thing that causes hernias, really it's the thing at a moment in time that might bring out the hernia. So really it's a genetic origin, and they occur in the groin, in the belly button region, and really just a few other places primarily.
So it's as simple as a weakness in the muscle wall that tends to split or tear, and then what happens, what comes out of that?
Right, so the real significance of the hernia is not just that there's a hole, it's that, as you mentioned about the origin of the word hernia, that something comes through that hole. And the something often is the intestine itself. So especially in lower abdominal hernias, the intestine that sits at the bottom of your abdomen with gravity will tend to push out of a hole, and it presents to the person as like a bulge. You see this like swelling, and really what you're looking at is this intestine coming through the muscle, with the skin being the only other thing there. And then obviously with something coming through this hole, the tension of being inside this hole, what's squeezing it is what can give you pain or potentially emergencies.
So if the intestine or whatever gets stuck in there, that's when you have an emergency.
Correct.
So how does the lifting, is that because you put some undue pressure on that area?
Yeah, I mean, it's a common sense thing that we think like when you lift, you exert, and with the force of an internal force, you can push the intestine outward. But really, we see more of the emergency complications from hernias with not just lifting, but that when somebody's eaten a really large meal over a short period of time and your abdomen distends from that food, and then the intestine finds the point of least resistance, which is the hernia hole, and then potentially they can be in the emergency room
Just
in
the
that
pressure
situation.
of it all.
Correct.
Do you think that do people that work out and have strong stomach muscles and so forth have less problems than people maybe who are more sedentary?
No, there's a large population of people who are really in shape. I treat a lot of really high-end athletes that do triathlons, and they get hernias, and a lot of people who do nothing and really are relatively weak often don't get hernias. So again, there's really this genetic predisposition.
Kind of no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah.
But it's so common. I mean, so what kind of had you gravitate towards this? Because there aren't that many people that just specialize in that, and it's kind of a unique situation.
The thing that attracted to me is many things, but one of the main things is that it's really enjoyable type surgery, because you evolve by appreciating what is really what would look like a puzzle to you, and over time, by looking at something that is always different, and that over time you eventually be able to see through that puzzle, and that's really the art of it. That with less experience, even very talented surgeons have trouble doing an accurate hernia operation.
I remember my dad had a hernia, and he wore some kind of belt when I was young. I didn't know what it was all about, but is it important to get it taken care of right away, or what's the?
Well, it's really unpredictable what's going to happen with the hernia. Some people can live with a hernia for many years and not have a problem and not have any discomfort. And many people will get a hernia and within weeks have severe pain or even be in the emergency room with incarceration. So there's options to live with it and to have surgery for it, and in any given situation, no one knows the exact answer.
So if you let it go, what happens? Then I've heard about these things really protruding out of the body, and people just don't take care of it.
Exactly.
I mean, that sounds a little crazy
Yeah,
to me, but
you should see what we see. They tend to get bigger over time, but not in everybody. And I certainly see hernias that are bigger than a bowling ball in a person who's otherwise a thin, average person. And that the hernia, again, is the whole, but the viscera, the intestine, and the internal fat protruding out of the hernia can be the size of a bowling ball, absolutely, with time. But for some reason, some people, whether they exert themselves or not, manage to not have their hernias change, and we don't know why.
that's a hard one for me to get my hands around. Stay with us, we're going to go to break when we get back. What are your options on hernia repair?
Is Mom really taking her medications?
A Comfort Keeper can ensure that your loved one gets their medications on time, providing peace of mind for families in need of flexible in-home care. Comfort Keepers, let our family take care of yours.
Let's face it, life happens, and the laws change daily. Attorney Joseph Len can help guide you with legal issues you may face while aging. Len Law has helped countless clients in Sarasota and Port Charlotte in assistance with guardianships, Medicaid planning, VA planning, estate planning, wills and trusts, probate, and Social Security disability claims.
I'm elder law attorney Joseph Len. At Len Law, seniors matter. Your rights matter. And the legacy that you built matters.
The Harvey Center for Integrative Medicine is helping people every day to thrive and live healthy, vital lives. Our integrative approach combines conventional medicine with holistic and innovative therapies to help you achieve optimal function. Are you ready to function at 100% of your ability? Dr. Fred Harvey customizes tools and treatments to achieve optimal wellness at any age.
Hi, I'm Dr. Fred Harvey. Do you want to feel vital, vibrant, and fully energized? If so, call our office to find out how.
Welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Jonathan Eunice, Center for Hernia Repair, one of the most common surgeries out there. And we were talking a little bit about, what causes a hernia. Let's talk about, should you get a hernia repair? You got a little bit of a problem, when should you really say, I need to take a look at this?
Well, the natural history of the hernia, as we discussed earlier, varies between people, but in general, the recommendation is to have your hernia fixed. And the reason is that especially with many years ahead of you in your life, that at some point, likely it is going to become either painful or even potentially an emergency. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever been a patient in the emergency room, it's not the greatest experience. So you're much better off having the hernia fixed electively.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the reason to have the hernia fixed is they tend to get larger over time. And if you wait for the hernia to get larger, like I was referring to before, the operation to fix the hernia becomes a much bigger deal for the patient.
It's better to do a minor surgery than a major one.
Correct. So that's another reason. And the third reason, actually, in some people is cosmetic. They just don't like the way they look, and so I'm there to get rid of it.
Because you get a little bit of a bulge in that area?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's different areas that you repair surgery, the hernias that can occur in different areas. Are the surgeries different, or how do you repair them?
There's many different ways, and that's again why I enjoy and moved into this type of practice, because there are, for each type of hernia, there's probably 4 or 5 operations, because even though we have a lot of academics and it's becoming very popular in university hospitals to be specializing in hernia repairs, we can't decide on what's the right operation for any given hernia. So there's a lot of controversy. So it ranges from the open conventional approach, where if there's a bulge in, say, your groin or your belly button, that the incision for the surgery is directly over it. And then we isolate the viscera, the fat or intestine that's coming out of the hole. And then obviously there's got to be a lot of importance of the understanding of the surrounding anatomy. And then we send it back inside and repair the hole with one of many techniques, often involving mesh, which we should discuss separately. And then we also have, obviously, laparoscopic and robotic technology now. Robotic technology is kind of the new laparoscopic. Laparoscopic has been big, obviously, for the last 20 years, and that's when we make small incisions remote from the area of the problem, whether it be a gallbladder or in this case we're talking about hernias. And we put a camera in and 2 other small incisions, usually where instruments go through, and then using a video monitor by hand, you're exposing what's going through this hernia hole, understanding the surrounding anatomy without injuring it, bringing everything back in and repairing the hole by closing it with a certain technique or putting a mesh or a patch to help to heal the hernia and prevent it from coming back.
It's almost like a screen versus a sewing technique.
Correct, and sometimes we combine both.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest thing that I'm enjoying quite a bit, but doesn't apply to every hernia, is the robotic technology. And
How long has that been around?
It's been big in surgery now. It's began about 10 years ago, and now it's becoming much more popular. And it's truly enjoyable for the surgeon in the sense that we can sit down and it's much more comfortable. But the advantages of it in not just hernia surgery but other surgery is that it can potentially be much more accurate in terms of what the surgeon sees, that we have much higher resolution than even what you're seeing with your own eyes. And we see in 3 dimensions. So we're inside a viewer that's a 3-dimensional viewer with extraordinarily high resolution. And the robotic technology allows movements of your hands that you can't do otherwise with, say, the straight laparoscopic, we call them straight sticks. So in robotics, we have these little instruments that can articulate and move and do things that you just couldn't do normally with your hands.
I can't imagine that doesn't take a little bit of practice to get that down.
Yeah, it's been a big work in progress for me as well as many people. There's been a lot of practicing, obviously, with simulators and then simple surgeries, and I've been involved with it for about 4 or 5 years now. It's really making a big difference.
How many general surgeons are using robotics?
In the percentage-wise, in the country, I would say about 30% right now.
So it's been growing.
It's been growing.
But obviously, you wasn't somebody who's had a lot of practice on it first.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's several foot pedals that you're obviously dealing with blindly, and you have to know where to put your foot. That's in terms of energy or moving the camera, and then there's all these hand controls, and you're looking only in a viewer. So
does an assistant help you move some of that stuff
That's
around?
an excellent question. One of the most interesting parts of it is that the surgeon is in the corner of the room, or potentially in the future in New York, and the patient is in Switzerland.
Wow.
That I am in a booth in the corner, and my assistant, in this case, plays a much bigger role than historically they played, because in the beginning of the operation, I put in these ports, these instruments through little holes, and there's a very delicate technique to doing that, but the assistant is at the bedside changing instruments for me while I'm, if I need to change from a scissor to a clamp or some kind of grasper, they're changing that. Or sometimes in some operations, they're literally passing in from instruments and doing things by hand while I'm in the booth. So it is a big deal. Yeah.
So what's the difference between, an open surgery where you actually open the body up and the old way of
Right.
incisions versus the laparoscopy? What are kind of the pros and cons?
Well, we still have a very big role for open surgery, and so that's still at least 50% of my practice, and robotic is probably 35, and then laparoscopic is about 15. So again, the advantage of the robotic is this amazing resolution and dexterity that you have. But when we have people with really advanced large hernias, the operation where I make the bigger incision, which doesn't necessarily translate into pain, is something where in the end I remove all this extra skin, and the cosmetic improvement is much more dramatic when I do it, quote, open, because when I make the incision, I fix the hernia, and then I can do this contouring to remove the extra skin and shape the muscle the proper way. Whereas when you're doing robotic or laparoscopically, you're on the inside, and the skin is just nothing that you're dealing with. So that's an open advantage.
Seems like there's a lot of artistry that goes into helping people make a decision as to the best way to go.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions.
Yeah. Stay with us, check out our sponsors. We get back, find out how to recover from hernia surgery. Stay with us.
The Harvey Center for Integrative Medicine is helping people every day to thrive and live healthy, vital lives. Our integrative approach combines conventional medicine with holistic and innovative therapies to help you achieve optimal function. Are you ready to function at 100% of your ability? Dr. Fred Harvey customizes tools and treatments to achieve optimal wellness at any age.
Hi, I'm Dr. Fred Harvey. Do you want to feel vital, vibrant, and fully energized? If so, call our office to find out how.
Let's face it, life happens, and the laws change daily. Attorney Joseph Land can help guide you with legal issues you may face while aging. Len Law has helped countless clients in Sarasota and Port Charlotte in assistance with guardianships, Medicaid planning, VA planning, estate planning, wills and trusts, probate, and Social Security disability claims.
I'm elder law attorney Joseph Land. At Len Law, seniors matter. Your rights matter. And the legacy that you built matters.
When a stroke or injury impacts your life, we're here to help you get it back. With our dedicated team of specialists, personalized treatment plans, the most inventive technologies, and a coordinated approach to recovery. This is more than just rehabilitation. This is a higher level of care.
Hey, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Jonathan Eunice, Center for Hernia Repair right here in Sarasota. We're talking about the world of hernias. We talked about different types of ways of repairing a hernia. You've got the open incision, you've got the laparoscopy, and you've got the robotic method. And we talked a little bit about pros and cons. Let's talk about the actual surgery itself and different ways of repair once you get in there.
Well, there are as I described earlier, many different techniques, and the biggest issue is seeing the variation of the anatomy and taking account for that so nothing is injured. And basically, with open or laparoscopic or robotic, you're exposing the hernia, you're usually closing the hernia hole, and then using mesh. And mesh, which is something that's been a big thing in the media, as you're well aware, is used historically in hernia surgery because we know scientifically that it completely lowers the risk of the hernia coming back again. And mesh comes in many different forms. There's many different types of materials.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you've got this pretty strong fabric basically keeping the body from protruding in a weak area that you've sewn versus sewing it up, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Correct.
So, you know, as you said, there's a lot of information on the media, people, you know, mesh companies being sued and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was about and how has mesh evolved over the years?
So, as I said, you know, mesh is important to help prevent hernia recurrences. I certainly don't use it in every operation. And there's many different types of materials. The basic mesh material, as it's important to understand, is a plastic, a polypropylene, which is a very common plastic, and it's woven, thus the word mesh. And yes, your instinct about why we use mesh is correct, but the other beauty of mesh is that the woven characteristic, where there's this mesh with holes in it, is the body sees that inert material, which is really non-reactive, and it wants to grow through it and into it like a lattice, and it ultimately creates a stronger muscle where the muscle integrates into it. There's many different materials, and the problem with why there's lawsuits now about mesh is that, as you know, in any kind of surgery there's complications. And the biggest issue with mesh is that hernia surgery is common, mesh is used commonly, and when the wrong mesh is put in not the quite proper way in the wrong patient, there are problems. So it's not always really just the mesh's fault. It takes a lot of experience to decide what mesh to use and how to put it in. And that's really where most of the problems are. And the problems with mesh are not about cancer or death so much as chronic pain. It's not put in the right place, I see patients that I have to go back in and remove their mesh.
You do a lot of work in repairs, do you not?
Correct. A lot of my practice is revisional hernia surgery, where people come to me where they have pain from a hernia operation 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and we remove it and then reconstruct it in a way where we do not use mesh, actually.
Okay, that's interesting. So, how big is this piece typically? I mean,
well, it can be anywhere from 3 or 4 centimeters in diameter to sometimes in the general abdominal wall for really big hernias, 20 by 30 centimeters. Mm-hmm. And it's put inside the abdomen, but very often, but the most modern way to do it right now is to use lighter weight materials and to put it between muscle layers or inside the sheath of the rectus muscles. So the new thing right now in hernia surgery is to, quote, hide the mesh. So we need to use it, but we need to use less of it, lighter weight of the mesh, and to put it where it's not exposed to the intestines, where it's really flat. And these are the kinds of things that are now leading to even more statistically better outcomes.
So do you know in advance, does it always go the way you expect it to go, or do you have to change in midstream once you get in there and you see different things?
That's a good question. Absolutely. We often see things that, you know, our imaging technology, which is often used before surgery, CAT scan, MRI, and ultrasound, is really relatively primitive compared to me looking at something on the inside. So you're right, sometimes I go in and I think it's just this, but then we have to change tacks completely.
What's a typical recovery like for people?
That obviously depends on the hernia, but it's often a lot better than what people think from hearing it from the history of hernias. So for an inguinal hernia, which is the most common type of hernia, the groin hernia, oftentimes the operations are always performed on an outpatient basis, but oftentimes there's such little pain that in our practice we usually don't even use prescription pain medicine. So that's something that most people aren't aware of, that Tylenol or ibuprofen is usually fine for the initial recovery.
That's
And then people with a desk job, depending on the level of motivation, could be back to work within days. And people that do physical labor are often back to work within a couple of weeks.
So once you've got past those couple weeks, you're good to go back to exercise and lifting weights and all that good stuff.
Correct. When I deal with very high performance athletes, or I deal with people that do really heavy lifting for a living, we kind of taper or increase their activities over about a 6-week period, because scientifically we think 6 weeks is when that mesh is fully incorporated into the muscle, and at that point you're done worrying about it.
You talked a little bit about fixing people. What kind of reoccurrence rates are there?
Well, historically the recurrence rates for inguinal hernia repair range anywhere from 5 to 20% in the United States. Another way to look at the same thing is that in my big hernia practice, of the inguinal hernias that I do, I would say 1 out of 4 are recurrent hernias that have been done before.
Wow.
And the hernias are not supposed to come back again. If they're done properly, you really should not be expecting the hernia to come back again. A lot of misconception with this is that people think the mesh eventually weakens or breaks down or tears. Really, hernia recurrences are a result of technical problems from the original surgery, or certain compromises that we make where somebody's sick or it's too high risk to put the mesh here, and even I might do an operation where I'll expect a recurrence in a few years. But you really, for an average healthy person like yourself, you really should never expect that your hernia should ever come back again.
And does that reflect in your recurrence rates?
Yeah, I'm working. It's still a work in progress, but yes, as I was saying before, the more you see, it's really an experiential thing. Not just me, but most hernia specialists that you would go to, their risks of recurrence are much lower than even very excellent surgeons who only do 1 or 2 hernias a week.
You have people flying in from all over the country, I understand.
Yes, we enjoy that, and we've made the process really simple and predictably good for these people. Yes.
Well, it's been educational. I hope it was helpful for you. Send us your questions or topics that you'd like to see us do here on the Thriving on the Suncoast. We thank you for watching. Give Dr. Eunice a call if you have questions on hernia repair. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Comfort keepers, 'cause there's no place quite like home. Call Comfort Keepers.